It's been a couple years since I've completed a project, whether it be a film, television show, or novel, and instantaneously felt ultra fucking eager to tell everyone else in the world about the greatness I had just experienced. I'm quite sure the most recent example would be the fantastic series finale of Better Call Saul. I wasn't even intending to drop a Penguin-centric video until the new year, but I simply can't help but to spew my praises immediately after having stayed up into the wee hours of the night, watching this truly fucking mind-blowing 8th and final episode of this masterful limited series entitled A Great or Little Thing, directed by industry veteran Jennifer Getzinger and written by the fucking ridiculously talented creator and showrunner Lauren LaFranc. This preposterously good finale does this incredible job of simultaneously wrapping up this magnificent 8-part tale while seamlessly and excitingly planting seeds that will surely pay off in this universe's future. All the while, this series enhances the cinematic universe's past. In rewatching 2022's The Batman subsequent to the show's completion, the scope of Gotham City instantly feels more vast. This place feels more so real and lived in. There's a primary trio of scenes that ultimately set the stage for this grand narrative's next chapter, the first of which takes place in the courtroom between Oz and corrupt Councilman Haiti. The second is the scene which centers on a letter from Sophia's half-sister, while featuring Dr. Rush and a captive Sophia within her cell, whilst the third scene to which I'm referring occurs right before this 68-minute piece's credits roll. Firstly, I must tip my top hat to the few subtle nods to Danny DeVito's Penguin from the Burtonverse. Of course, in episode 5, Homecoming, we're introduced to Oz's new base of operations, an abandoned sewer/trolley system, which we ultimately learn is of great significance to Oz, while DeVito's Cobblepot is twistedly raised by literal penguins within the Gotham sewers after being abandoned by his parents. A plotline of the 92 picture sees the Penguin running for mayor as part of a corrupt scheme involving Chris Walken's Max Schreck, while through this interesting encounter between Oz and the corrupt councilman, whose nostrils he fucked up with pliers in a previous episode, Mr. Cobb is seated behind the big desk, the mayoral nameplate stationed before him. But those are just fun little details, as is the fact that the window dressing within the courtroom subtly acts as an allusion to the Court of Owls. Though I must also give credit to Oswald for intelligently pulling off a bit of a Walter White, Saul Goodman maneuver, in that when providing Haiti with a specifically constructed story that benefits both of them, Oz manipulates and twists actual truths into a bullshit conjured up, biased narrative designed to make himself seem clean, to make him appear innocent and uninvolved. Brilliant stuff. Haiti's just another addition to this show's impressively immense collection of intriguing individuals. Oz's sketchy alliance with him assures some governmental control, which will surely cause a negative ripple effect on the city going forward. This Julian Rush character only grew more intriguing to me as the series progressed. Through the first half of the show, he is sort of the Harley to Sophia Falcone's Joker, which is quite cool. But then, the true deranged depth of his psychopathy is explored a bit. He offers to permanently silence a little girl, and he mentally exploits and tortures a disturbed older woman with dementia before not even batting an eyelash when ordered to chop off her pinky. All of this makes his calm and quiet demeanor much creepier. I'm aware of the theory some had that Dr. Rush was a figment of Sophia's imagination, due in large part to the fact that, I guess, prior to episode 8, he had only directly interacted with Sophia herself once the two are outside of Arkham. If I had never read that theory, it would have never crossed my mind. I not only just simply never got that impression, I also just don't see what purpose that would serve. I'm not sure what I'm personally meant to get out of that reveal. Emotionally and symbolically, this, to me, unnecessary, tropey twist wouldn't do much to sincerely deepen this already multifaceted and complex narrative. Though, in all honesty, I'm sure that if these brilliant writers did decide to go that direction, they'd make it into something special. But I digress. This series' end finds Sophia locked back up in Arkham Asylum, which is especially tragic for her, considering earlier in the episode, she stated that freedom was her greatest desire. Julian, who's returned to work, delivers Sophia Sophia a letter from her half-sister Selena Kyle. This was a development I wasn't even remotely considering, but I really dig it, as it opens up a world of possibilities. Does Sophia's devilish grin imply a potential team-up following a jailbreak surely facilitated by Dr. Rush? Will we get to see the story of the two trying to take out Oz? Which leads me to the question, how would Miss Falcone feel and react to her half-sibling's established alliance with Batman? Now, when Eve lovingly tells Oz that he's the king of Gotham, with no one left to stand in his way, we pull back from this disturbed dancing duo to the point where we're well outside the grand room's window. As the night sky began to engulf much of the frame, I literally shifted to the edge of my seat. I, alongside many of you I'm sure, was thinking to myself, if that bloody Batman signal appears, that will wrap this practically flawless finale with a bow. I grinned like a mother and applauded alone at about 2 a.m. when that beautiful iconic symbol appeared. So now that Oz possesses what he did not upon entering this series, power, how exactly will he fit into the story of the Batman Part 2, especially when taking into account the fact that Oz Cobb appears in about 5 or 6 scenes, similar to the 22 picture. So we're basically guaranteed between 12 and 20 wonderful Farrell-filled minutes, one of these scenes probably being some sort of badass action set piece, like the awesome car chase from movie 1. And whilst I adored essentially every moment of the Penguin's involvement in that film, following this spectacular series, Oz is at his most nefarious and devilish and deranged. So surely the handful of scenes this time around will only be a footnote in the grand story of the Penguin, as he's turned himself into a pivotal part of this Matt Reeves universe. And I have such faith, I have wholeheartedly since before the day he was announced as director of the Batman, in Reeves and his team, that whether they decide to build Oz up into a primary antagonist in the trilogy's capper, perhaps, or have his story be legitimately continued in a Penguin Season 2, I'm on board with whatever the ultimate decision may be, as Reeves has just been proving his elite level of creative prowess to me time and time again for the last decade. Now, prior to episode number 7, Top Hat, I genuinely never considered that Oz could be responsible for the death of his brothers, but that sick fact led me to question, what in the fuck is going to go down when Francis learns the truth about Oz instigating, then allowing, his brothers drowning? Well, episode 8 commenced, and I was instantly assured that this masterpiece wasn't finished surprising me, as we learn through Dr. Rush's deranged therapeutic practices that not long after the death of the pair of young Cobb brothers, Frances discovered evidence that informed her of Oz's involvement. Then legendary Crown Point gangster Rex Calabrese, whom we know Oz has essentially always aspired to be, gives Ma a pair of options: either let Oz go or lean into his ruthless nature and ambition and groom him into becoming a big-time gangster. This mother-son dynamic just continues to deepen and become more complex and only grow more fascinating. Oz and his mother have truly made monsters of one another. Francis initially plans for Rex to ensure that Oz's night at Monroe's would be his last, before young Oz makes a promise to take care of her and provide her everything she deserves, and she very emotionally decides to keep her lone remaining son alive and around. So now, prior to their reunion in A Great or Little Thing, my big question was completely flipped on its ass. Now I was anxious to see how the hell Oz is going to react when learning, firstly, that his biggest inspiration, Rex Calabrese, was prepared to blow his brains out when he was a child, but more importantly, that his mom ultimately rescinded, but initially ordered his hit, and has known of his deep dark secret all this time. What was always a creepy, toxic, but oddly endearing mother-son dynamic is revealed to be purely gross and deranged, and founded upon deceit and delusion. Genuinely the most but fascinating familial relationship I've ever seen depicted. This scene between Oz and Ma fucking leveled me with its brilliance. Dee Dee O'Connell in particular is Emmy-worthy, just chillingly effective. It's powerful and personal, listening to her verbally, then eventually physically tear Oz apart. And of course, this is the final moment the two share together, as Oz refuses to admit any wrongdoing, before having a stroke, which puts her in a vegetative state. And after all this, a bloody, deluded Oz perches his ma in the penthouse overlooking the city, paralyzed and crying in her hospital bed, to tragically starkly remind us that Francis is still in there. It's torturous also considering that a few episodes back, Ma pleaded with Oz to pull the plug on her once she reached this sort of state, but Oz speaks to her as if everything's hunky-dory, as if he's now succeeding in making her proud. But of course those words can't, and wouldn't anyway, come out of Ma's mouth, so Oz has the fantasy-fulfilling Eve to do so, while dressed in Francis cosplay. Fuck intriguing insanity. One of our final moments sees our dynamic duo sitting side by side. Part of me was prepared to be hit with a mirror to the pilot episode, with the two sipping Slurpees, shooting the shit, and looking out at the cityscape whilst Dolly Parton's 9 to 5 sounds. Boy, was I wrong. I began to get quite nervous after the two quietly exchange some wholesome pleasantries. Oz starts going on about how Vic has been by his side through it all, every step of the way. He's seen Oz at his most vulnerable, and I started to sweat as Oz puts his arm around his protege, before chillingly stating to Vic that he can't take him along this time. As Vic is brutally choked and pleading with his self-proclaimed family to stop, the Penguin utters some words that solidify him as a truly villainous, unsympathetic, inhumane monster. While he's choking the life out of his ride or die, essentially, he states that he learned that although family can be one's strength, it will sure as shit be one's weakness. And although Oz refers to Vic as a good man in the kid's final torturous moments, he never again will allow himself to bring upon that weakness of having someone around for whom he truly cares. Not only does the Penguin kill this kid, who has saved his big ass on multiple occasions, with a quick bullet to the melon for example, he fucking strangles him until he stops moving, with his bare hands. Then he pickpockets him and tosses his ID in the water, like he's nothing. This is a simultaneously heartbreaking and bloody genius moment. I'm sure I stated in a past video entitled My Thoughts on the Penguin that one of the difficulties of centering an entire series of episodes on a villain is that it can be easy to fall into the trap of humanizing said villain too much, making them, whether intentionally or unintentionally, more of an anti-hero than a foe. The Penguin limited series stays miles away from said trap, as it ultimately has our Oz seeming and being more of a malicious, infinitely hateable piece of shit than he's ever been prior.